Do you find the subject of drum muffling confusing, or do you struggle to get the sound that you want? Today I'm going to show you how to use muffling to get the exact sound you want. And at the end of this video, I've got a bonus for you. If you're new to this channel, I'm a professional drummer based out of Kansas City. I'm also a private teacher who's helped many students achieve a very high level of playing on the instrument, including my student Joel McCoy, who also became a professional drummer and now plays in Nashville. Okay, the first thing that we're going to talk about today is the most common problem I see with muffling. And the most common problem is that most beginning drummers tend to over-muffle their drums. Hey, by the way, if you're really enjoying these videos, please hit that like and subscribe button. That really helps me to keep growing this channel. Thank you in advance. I have a really classic example of over-muffling right here in front of me. Recently, I ordered a used Yamaha Stage Custom set from Guitar Center. These are beautiful birch shells, and the drums look like they're almost new. Well, listen how they sound. They sound like a cardboard box. There's no tone at all, no resonance to that drum. A drum is supposed to resonate when you hit it. Whoever owned this drum set put felt strips on the top and bottom head of every single drum on this set. Therefore, they killed all the tone of the drums. Now, first of all, I will say that the drummer that owned these drums may have lived in an apartment, and maybe he was just trying to make them quieter. And if that was his only goal, he definitely made them quieter. When you cut all the resonance out, they don't have hardly any volume at all. But why do most beginning drummers over-muffle their drums? Well, there's a couple of reasons for this. Well, first of all, they have no idea what a good sounding drum is really supposed to sound like. It's kind of hard to tell when you listen to a recording because you're hearing all the instruments at once. And so it's hard to tell what the drums actually sound like by themselves. And so when beginning drummers hear these drums by themselves, they sound really ringy to them. And so they tend to over-muffle them to get rid of that ring. Secondly, beginning drummers have no idea how to tune their drums. And I did a whole video about tuning drums, so if you haven't seen that video, please go back and watch that video. Tuning and muffling drums are two different things. But what happens is because beginning drummers don't know how to tune the drums, they hear all these ugly overtones. A really out-of-tune drum has lots of terrible tones to it. And so they start muffling the drum to try to get rid of all this ugliness. Unfortunately, what happens is they dampen all the good tones along with those ugly overtones. So the first thing you need to do before you start muffling your drums is you need to tune your drums. So assuming your drums are in tune, what's next? How and when do we muffle them? The two biggest factors are the style of music you play and the heads that you're using on that drum set. I actually have a couple different preferences depending on the kind of music that I'm playing. For instance, I play a lot of acoustic jazz, and for that type of music, usually you want very little muffling or no muffling. The drumming in that style of music is very dynamic, and sometimes you play extremely soft, and if you're playing on a drum that's very muffled, you won't even hear those notes come out. In that style, you usually want as much resonance as possible, so I use thin 1-ply heads which are very resonant. They ring more. They produce a certain tone that you expect to hear in acoustic jazz. Kind of like this. So I use no muffling at all in this situation with a couple of exceptions. I use a felt strip on my bass drum batter head. That's how most of the jazz drummers from the classic era muffled their bass drums. So it sounds similar to the way theirs sounded. The bass drum really does need some muffling because it's so big. It's too boomy without just a little bit of muffling. So this provides just the right amount of muffling for that type of music. For the snare drum, again, I don't use any type of muffling, so it sounds like this. Kind of ringy. Occasionally we play a more modern, kind of funky tune, and then I'll use one of these, basically a zero ring, to muffle the drum. That gives it a more controlled sound. So that works well for acoustic jazz. For other kinds of music, these unmuffled drums sound completely out of place. For playing rock, pop, country, and other contemporary styles of music, you need a more controlled sound. And there's basically two ways to get that sound. The first way is with the kind of heads that you use. For these styles of music, it's common to use 2-ply heads rather than 1-ply heads. And automatically, a 2-ply head is much more muffled than a 1-ply head. For your toms, if you're using 2-ply heads for the batter head, that may be all the muffling you need. If you need just a little more muffling, you can put a Moongel on there. They do have heads with even more muffling built in. A Remo Pinstripe is a great example of that. So with this type of head, there's really no need to add any extra muffling. For a while, I was actually using 1-ply Evans heads for playing with my rock group. This worked for me fine because I usually don't play very loud. Therefore, I didn't have to worry about breaking or denting the heads. I just muffled those drums with a 0 ring like I have here. And that gave me just the right muffling for the sound that I wanted. I personally like these type of mufflers because you get an equal sound all the way around the drum. There are different companies that make these, and they all basically work just the same. They're basically kind of a part of a drum head. They're made out of the exact same material. They work very well if you take good care of them. If they get bent, then they don't sit right on the drum. And then when you hit them, you get a slight rattling. So when you're not using them, you want to take good care of them. You want to hang them up, which I did not do with this one, and it's bent. So it creates a bit of a rattle. You can hear it. But if they're in good shape, these are really the kind of mufflers that I prefer. To me, they simply sound better than anything else that I've ever tried. I mentioned Moongel earlier, and I do use that once in a while. This stuff is very popular. You can easily throw 1 or 2 on a drum depending on how much muffling you want. But again, personally, I don't like this way of muffling as well as those 0 rings. You get an uneven muffling when you use this type of muffling. I don't know if you can hear that on the video, but to me that doesn't sound as good as the 0 ring. As I mentioned earlier, for playing rock and contemporary music, I like a 0 ring on the drum, and I usually use just a 1-ply head because I like that sound. Now, years ago, I discovered something very fascinating about the bass drum. I used to always use a pillow in my bass drum to get that contemporary sound. Then one day a student of mine gave me an Evans EMAD head to try on my bass drum. This type of head has mufflers built into it. It was like night and day for me. I simply couldn't believe how much better that bass drum sounded with that Evans EMAD head. Changing that one bass head also changed the sound of my entire drum kit in a positive way. The whole thing sounded just so much better. I learned an important lesson that day. The tone you get out of a particular drum is not just the type of muffling you use, but it's mostly dependent on the type of drum head you use. The type of heads that you use on your drums affects the tone probably more than anything else other than your tuning. Personally, I don't use any muffling on the bottom heads. I use 1-ply heads and I let them ring. You get a lot of tone from that bottom head, and to me there's no reason to muffle it. So there you have it. Tune your drums first and then muffle. Don't use any more muffling than you need to get the sound that you want. You always want to hear a good tone, but sometimes you want a more controlled sound than in other situations. And if you are going to muffle, I recommend muffling the batter head only. Now for the bonus I mentioned earlier. As a thank you for watching today, I have a free gift that I'd like to send you. I have a list of 10 beats that all drummers need to know. It also comes with an exclusive video demonstrating all the beats. Again, all free. Just follow the link in the video or in the comments below. Please comment below and tell me what kind of drum heads you use. Or if you want to just comment helpful, that would also be really awesome. Be sure to subscribe to my channel for new drum videos every week. Thank you for watching, and I have that other video about tuning drums that I know will also really help you. Please watch that next, and we'll see you next time.